All right. So I think it's 12 o'clock. We're going to kick it off. So first of all, everybody, welcome so much to our educational webinar series. So most people know me, Jim I, the Chief Customer Officer at eTech Global Services. Kim Howell is the Chief Operating Officer at Ascent Business Partners. He's been a longtime friend of mine. And of course, we've got Manu Develdi, who a lot of you guys don't know, but is really the brains behind most of the stuff I talk about. So he is absolutely smarter than me. I know my friends already know that. But anyway, if you want to connect with any of us on LinkedIn, feel free to take a screen capture of that or hit your phone up and it'll bring you to our LinkedIn pages. As all three of us produce a lot of content and it's all free. You can learn a lot of stuff about what's going on, not only in the industry, but there's some cool articles out there that we publish. A little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me, 34-year veteran in the contact center industry. I actually ran ops for over a decade for eTech. I've been here 24 years. Some of the things we're going to talk about is really more down to earth, I think. I am not a techie. I'm an ops guy. So hopefully today we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to accomplish today, which is not only just talking a little bit about where the industry is, but hopefully you'll get some good takeaways, including some templates that we will share with you to go. So why do we deserve to be here to talk? So for those of you who don't know about eTech, like I said, I joined the company in 2000. It was a wholly owned subsidiary of Bell South. 2 years after I moved my family from Pennsylvania, as you can tell, I'm not from Texas. They divested of all the assets. Luckily for me, my boss, Matt Rocco, I've been with him for over 30 years, took the company private. When he took the company private in 2003, we had 400 team members, one location, Nacogdoches, Texas. Today, we operate in 3 countries, 10 dynamic call center sites with over 3,600 employees. We've done this with no mergers, no acquisitions, no venture capitalists. Most of our customers are Fortune 50 clients. How do we do it? 3 divisions. eTech, which is our contact centers. eTech Insights, which is our actionable insights. We built this when I was in ops to actually drive performance for eTech. That's the reason it was built. Because we've done such a great job with it, our customers started saying, hey, how can I get this data? So we actually spun out that organization, falls up under my leadership, and now we actually offer this as a service. We have our own technology division, so we built our own tech stacks, including website development and some of the applications. So none of it's outsourced. So let's talk about the agenda. So first, we're going to talk about how you choose the right platform, because there are several, and eTech uses, as some of you know that I talk about it, we use 7 different tech stacks because I don't believe there's one best in the industry. I think the problem with the industry is everybody tries to sell you what they can accomplish. And I tell people from step 1 is identify your goals first. Then you can actually start looking at what you're trying to accomplish. And Kim's going to talk a little bit about some of the steps on that as well. We're going to identify some of the right use cases based on your business, not what the companies tell you their use case is. Kim's going to talk really big about planning and implementation and strategy. Her and Manu will double hit that. Manu will hit up on managing accuracy. Kim's going to tell how to get stakeholder buy-in. We're going to talk about surgical insights versus superficial insights. We're going to talk about enrolling your agents, because at eTech, I can tell you, that's a learning from us. We made a mistake when we launched it because we went right to the leaders and told them all about this stuff. My lesson learned there was, really got to go right to the bottom and move my way up instead of coming to the top down. And of course, we'll talk about some potential benefits of analytics. With that being said, I think I'm going to pop a survey real quick. If I'm not mistaken, a little poll. And New Palm's going to pop this up. So do you want to receive conversational analytics mitigation packet? This is one of the takeaways. If you do it, and we will get them out to you. It's just basically some templates that we use. I scraped all the company names and everything out of it, I hope. But it'll give you guys some information that would help you as you're going down this journey. If you're already in the journey, by the way, and you're not seeing what we're showing you today, then I can tell you definitely download it, because it's probably not fine-tuned correctly, or you probably missed some of the steps when you're implementing AI. Think I'm good? Nope, still going. Let me give them a couple more minutes. Lots of people want the package. All right, we're good?
Let's wait for 15 more seconds because numbers are still moving.
Okay.
And we'll end the poll in 3, 2, 1.
Take your time. I'll practice my dice shooting for those of you who've been to Vegas with me. All right, let's rock and roll. So let's talk about the day in the life of a call center supervisor. I think some of you who are in ops will understand this, right? So this is what they're doing in their everyday. They review, they talk to their teams, they have to figure out improvement, they got to check their calls, they get busy doing paperwork, team development, support, feedback, discuss, and pull reports. That's the problem. If you look at our sales coaches, and we call them coaches, we don't call people managers at eTech, but if you have a supervisor, a frontline leader, whatever you call them in your organization, think about it. Look at their job description. Nowhere in there does it say they have to be a data analyst, data scientist, or data engineer. And yet we expect them to know how to do all this. That's one of the reasons we built what we built, because I believe in my humble opinion, because I was born and raised from the call center business. I remember as a frontline coach, my boss would say, hey, you know what you're doing? Oh yeah, absolutely, boss. There's no way am I going to admit that I don't know what I'm doing. So we came out with a different process, which is let me show them who to coach, what to coach, how to coach, and give them next best actions. Because if I surgically give them the data, whether they know it or not, and by the way, everybody was I argue with this all the time, because, well, they're a supervisor, they should know. Yeah, they should. But did we train them successfully? Did we give them the tools to be successful like we say we do? So that's kind of where I came up with this analogy of let's give them the tools to be successful, but let's show them how to use it. Let's not offend them, teach them along the way. I'm going to pass it over to Manu. Manu joined eTech as an agent, by the way. He's much more humble than me, which is how much I respect him so much. He's an MIT graduate. He just received Asia Leadership Award as one of the top AI thought leaders in the country. I want to welcome you, Manu, and let you take it over from here.
Thank you so much, Jim. Hey everyone, I'm Manu Divedi. Today, I'll be talking to you about what we have learned in last 10 years implementing speech analytic platforms, not just for us, for almost every speech analytic engine out there. And well, it all starts by selecting the right platform. So when you think about selecting the right platform, there are some key things that you always have to keep in mind. People talk about accuracy, and I'm going to talk a lot about accuracy today as well, but it's not just transcription accuracy. You should also keep in mind that every event that you are tagging should be accurate. So even if your transcription accuracy is 92 to 94%, if your event are not being tagged accurately, you're not really gonna get much out of it. And second key important thing that we see a lot right now is a lot of organizations are buying technology to just put it on their shelves. You will have different tools that do not integrate with each other. And now what ends up happening is you're creating multiple silos across the organization as you're dependent on a specific tool to perform a specific function, but not be able to get that data out of it. That's why it's very important to ensure that you are able to integrate these tools with your existing systems. So it's very imperative that you go back and analyze the current systems you have in place, ensure that the tool you are acquiring is be able to integrate with all of them, and then make a decision. Of course, one of the key things that you have to keep in mind is ensuring flexibility. And what do we really mean by that? Let's say for now, you started on a small pilot of, let's say, 50 agent, and then you grew to somewhere around 2000 agent. All of this scaling should still be supported by the tool. It shouldn't happen that the moment you start scaling up or scaling down, you have to make contractual changes or you have to make technological changes. And at the same time, as I said earlier, the tool should be good enough to integrate with other platforms. It's up to you to decide if you want to have cloud-based solution or on-premise solution. Right now, it's more governed by your InfoSec standards. Are you a company who's not looking to get data out at all of your own infrastructure? If that's the case, you will go with an on-premise solution. If not, then of course, cloud-based solutions are always preferred because you get cheaper solution and you get better response times. Of course, you always have to think about features as well, right? But what features are you looking at? And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about on the next slide and tell you, apart from all of this tech stack that we are looking at, what are some features that will distinguish a provider for you specifically? And of course, the first one is the provider ready to customize the platform to suit your needs? Or are they gonna give you a out-of-box solution that you have to adjust yourself into? Every organization is dynamic. Also, will you be able to get the reportings and analytic that you need? Or will you have to rely on the pre-built reporting infrastructure that is built in the platform? If you are making a decision to acquire a technology, should you rely on only your teams to integrate it? Or should something that be something that a vendor should provide to you? So what we are discussing here is some specific features that sets a vendor apart, being customizable, having comprehensive reporting, ensuring that your tech teams don't have to spend time integrating a platform that you are acquiring. And of course, compliance and security is very imperative. Any speech analytic engine that you go out for should have basic redaction in place. What do I mean by that? You should be able to remove information like credit card numbers, social security numbers, SSN, and so on. If you are in healthcare industry, there is PHI redaction available as well to ensure you don't have to worry about sharing private health information. And one key thing, whenever you opt for a speech analytic engine, you also have to ensure that the provider is ensuring that every role in your organization has data that they need to be successful. Every role should have access to data. It shouldn't just be silos like analyst team is taking the information and then transitioning it somewhere else and so on. Your agent should be empowered with exactly what they need to succeed, what to work on, what are some opportunities, how we can get better. Your supervisor should have information that they need, who to coach today, what do I need to coach them on today, and analyst team information on call level architecture and so on. And all of this should be complemented with one key feature, that is specialized model architecture. And what we mean by that is the language model should be customizable. So instead of getting a generalized model that is built on general information available out there, your model should be customizable to not only contact center data but your specific vertical. You shouldn't need thousands of hours of recording just to be able to transcribe some pronouns properly. And all of this is only possible when your vendor is not only a technology vendor but also have the domain expertise to support you. Unless you have the domain expertise needed to be able to understand how to support a contact center function, what exactly call level details are, at what level should you be able to drive the sentiments on, you will not be able to make the change that you're looking for. If we move to the next slide, now we are going to talk about some of the use cases that all of this enables. For an example, of course, by doing this, now you are able to manage agent performance better. You are able to take information that is coming from speech analytic engines. And as Jim said all the time, you are able to focus on specific behaviors that empowers your agents to do better. So instead of having superficial insights saying, hey, your agents are doing something wrong, something good, you should be able to target specific behaviors that make your top performers the top performers, right? And same way, you should be able to analyze your customer VOC to understand exactly what are some key things that your customer love about you. What are some cross-selling opportunities, or how you can empower first call resolution better. Compliance is one of the easiest use case with speech analytics. How do you do that? Is by ensuring all of the compliance compliance points are built into the engine first. You should be easily able to ensure that you have compliance like verification, recording statement. You should also be able to detect or prevent fraud, and of course be able to analyze background noises and so on. And once you implement in use case analytics like this, you will be able to increase your operational efficiency and at the same time evolve your business intelligence need. I'm going to show you some use cases on the next slide that actually talk about these in detail. And remember, Jim said that we are going to talk about superficial insight and what's the difference between superficial insight and data-driven information. Here is an example of customer experience analysis specifically. Right now, there are two schools of thoughts. Some of the providers will provide you specific information out of pre-built models that will tell you, hey, overall, this number of customers are happy with you, this number of customers are unhappy. Here are some superficial reasons why. But so what? Unless you know exactly what is driving this sentiment and what was the solution provided by your agent, and then be able to allocate it into either a people category, a process category, or a technology category. So now you know exactly who to reach out to. If it's a people issue, then you work with agents. If it's a process issue, you work with your OPEX teams. And if it's a technology issue, you are able to work with your technology teams. So this is where speech analytic data, once extracted, is able to bring all the departments together and solve problems and not just allocate a score. The next use case is much more deeper into sales analytics specifically. So on the next slide, we will talk about sales analytics. So when it comes to sales specifically, you will see that a lot of focus is given to exactly who's the top performer, who is selling, who is not selling, and so on. But what you need to understand is there are specific key behaviors that make a top performer a top performer, like asking the right question, for an example, explaining the right benefits, ensuring that they are able to provide specific rebuttals to the objections that are coming from the customer. And all of that is only possible when you're able to use your speech analytic tool to be able to identify things like, when my agent asks for sale, what are some objections that my customers provide? And when these objections are stated, what are my top performers doing today to be able to overcome those objections? And now when you have that secret sauce from your top performers, you go back and you replicate it for the entire other three quartiles. And that's how you are able to analyze sales and drive improvement through speech analytic engine. I'm going to now talk specifically about how to implement a speech analytic engine and talk about the key steps that you should take. For an example, a lot of teams start backwards when they acquire a tool and then start looking at use case to solve. When in reality, what we have seen with our experience of decades, you should start by understanding, why do I really need AI? Is it only because I like having AI, or is it because I can solve real world problems with it? Once you understand exactly what are the use cases that you are driving using AI, now you need to define key metric that will help you track these successes, right? For an example, you identify that my contact center capacity right now is something that I need to work on, and a speech analytic engine can help me improve it. Or I can make more sales, or I can ensure that my customer sentiment improves. Now that you know exactly what you need AI for, you go back and you define metrics that will help you support this hypothesis. If it's contact center capacity, you analyze things like calls taken in a day, average handle time, and so on. If it's sentiment, then you analyze exactly what the CSAT numbers are right now. If it's sales, then you talk about conversion. Once you have this information, now you start collecting the right data and storyboarding it for you to understand what would the outputs look like. Unless you understand how you're going to plan to consume this data, how you will share that information, just having the data would not really make any difference. So your data should be consumable, actionable, and distributed at every role of the organization included in this project. Now that you have solidified initiation, it's time to move to the execution part. And you acquire a speech analytic tool, you start training the models. And this is where accuracy comes in, that I'm going to talk about soon. As I said earlier, accuracy is not only about transcription. Once you are sure that your categories are now accurate, and by category, I mean the events you are looking at, they are accurate, you dive deep into the analytical phase and integrate with your quality monitoring platform to ensure you are able to distribute this information. And then you start looking at training your teams, gaining their buy-in, which Kim is going to talk about today, and then ensure that you are able to continuously improve. One key thing to keep in mind, just distributing the data doesn't help. You have to ensure you are tracking changes. You have to ensure you are tracking things like coaching, cross-departmental functions, cross-departmental tasks, and closing that feedback loop to ensure you are always able to see improvement and an ROI. If you'll move to the next slide, now let's talk about specifically on accuracy. One key myth, guys, that everybody in the industry have been talking about is focusing too much on transcription. Let's be honest, in 2018, Google released a transformer model. The transcription accuracy has not been an issue at all. What you need to focus now everybody, all the vendors out there. Of course, the transcription is a little dynamic, so it depends a lot on the environment of your recording, format of your recording, and everything. But every vendor should be able to provide you somewhere around 86% accuracy. And if they are specifically tuned for contact centers, they should be 90 and above. So now what really matters is how accurate are the events that you are tagging within that speech engine. Because remember, in the end, you have to make decisions based on that accuracy. And that accuracy should be measured using the same universal benchmark that every machine learning model out there is measured on, including things like ChatGPT, DALL-E, and so on. And that benchmark is a confusion matrix. We are going to provide you the formulas after this webinar as well, but I'm going to talk about it a little. What do I mean by confusion matrix? Every event that you classified on a call, like agent asking for verification, can be an event. Now, every event that you classified on a call, how many of them were really true positive? How many of them were really false positive? And so on. Once you have this information, you need to ensure this is 85% or more accurate. Currently, we run somewhere around 94% accuracy, but this exactly is what matters, because now you have the right data to be able to drive improvement. And one key thing to keep in mind, you can always have 85%, 95% accuracy if your data is only overfitted. What I mean by that is, out of 100,000 calls, you are only covering 1,000 calls and you are very accurate. Does that really matter? It's not really different from listening to calls manually at that stage, right? That's why you have to ensure not only are you accurate, but at the same time, you're also covering 95% of your population at the least. So when you go to look out for a vendor, ask what your confusion metric accuracy is, and ask what is the current coverage that they are providing with that confusion matrix. With that, I'm going to introduce Kim now. Kim has been in this industry for 25 years. We know her as a change management guru. Kim has implemented technological driven change at organizations for decades and carries immense experience around it. Kim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Manu, and thank you, Jim, for inviting me today, and welcome everybody. So, just a quick rundown of my history. Yes, been in the contact center space for 25 years. The majority of that time running ops and people, right? Chief people officer. So that goes a lot to where we're going to talk about some change management strategies, because at the end of the day, AI and speech analytic tools are amazing, but they're not magic sprinkles. They don't solve everything. You still need people to execute on the strategies in which AI delivers for you in the pathing that they give you to do. So next slide, please. When we talk about gaining stakeholder buy-in, you can go one more, Jim. When we talk about gaining stakeholder buy-in, the first thing that I always make sure we are able to identify to those stakeholders is what is the problem we are trying to solve. And Manu touched on this a little bit, but I want to talk about it a little bit further because it's so important. And this goes to both the tangible and intangible benefits, because so often when someone, even in my history, someone would bring me a product saying, Kim, we need this. Why? We'll be able to cut cost. Great. That doesn't tell me anything, right? Yes, at the end of the day, as we're running business, everybody wants to increase their margins. Everyone wants to make more money. However, you really need to be able to classify why this product, what will this product solve specifically? And in the case of speech analytics, think about it. Yes. Does it solve the fact that you can go from 1,000 calls to 100% coverage? Absolutely. But think about all the different tentacles that speech analytics offers, right? So yes, does it give you now QA, automated QA, actionable items, better coaching? Absolutely. Now take it back. It also helps you with how to recruit differently, how to train differently, so that you get a quicker time to skill proficiency, and that you can over time increase that curve where you're seeing it takes a long time for them to get great QA scores. Now, if you're changing how we train and how we recruit because of the things that the QA or speech analytics tool gave us, you're changing your entire process. That's another way as you build into the ROI that you're going to be able to get your stakeholders to buy in. because you're going to see an increase in your spend, right? And yes, some of that is in FTE because you'll be able to cut some QA, but you're going to get where you're cutting it. And I always say this, like AI, it absolutely will replace some jobs. Let's not skirt around that. However, the people that will retain their jobs are the folks that are early adopters, willing to embrace AI, adapt with AI, and then change the job in which they're performing. So instead of having QA, FTE sitting there monitoring calls, you now have analysts. You now have folks that are just taking errors or exceptions. If you look at all the supervisors, or in Jim's world, coaches that are out there looking at the results that the speech analytic tool gives them, you are now developing coaches. You're not promoting the best of the agents on the floor and giving them a manager or coach title and hoping they can replicate themselves. You're now truly teaching them how to replicate themselves, and take it a step further, do it better. Because that at the end of the day is what we want to do. You know, Manu shared some real world examples and case studies. Those are important to put in front of your stakeholders. And aligning with organizational goals, I want to talk about this for a minute. Make sure you know your roadmap. And whatever speech analytics tool you embrace, you've got to make sure that they're vertical agnostic, right? What you hate to do is implement a technology that can't grow with you. So make sure that you're very clear on the vision of the company, make sure you're very clear on the technology, and make sure that they're able to adapt and grow with you. And then as far as potential challenges and concerns up front, we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about change management. But keep in mind all the different things and who you need to invest in from a stakeholder perspective. A very clear point that I want to make. Your stakeholders are not just the folks sitting in the C-suite. They're not just the department heads. You want to find those change leaders that are going to help you not just get this approved, not just get it implemented, but most importantly, make it successful. Any AI tool implemented without a champion to continue to see it through execution will fail, and it will be a waste of money. You need to ensure that you have those change leaders and those stakeholders from every level up. And I think Jim commented on that. Sometimes that bottom up approach works a lot better than the up down, because you have more folks in the trenches that understand the technology, understands its implications within the culture of the organization, and more importantly, will be more likely to embrace how will it make me better. Next slide, please. So as far as stakeholders, there's a lot of information here, and I'm just going to talk to a couple points of it. Ensuring, data privacy and compliance, data security and ethics is key with any AI you bring in. Because the worst thing you want to do is replace or enhance your human assets with AI that gets you in trouble, right? Because as much as there's a lot of guardrails within AI, and it typically makes less mistakes than humans can, because you don't have that, well, everyone's human theory, it's still AI. It's still learning. It's still being taught. It still needs guardrails. It still needs rules. So making sure that the CISO is one of your, early adopters. And I always say that when you're going through change management, you need to have a pack of people, right? Who's going to be your team or your unit or your committee that's going to push this through? I'm going to talk more about that here in a minute, but one of the people you really want to get on board long before you're presenting this for approval is your CISO, right? It's really important that they've already blessed what you're trying to do, because from personal experience, because I made this mistake once, did this wonderful presentation, and it was the first time they had seen it, and they were not happy. Why would you bring something into my environment that you have not talked to me about first? Great call out, great lesson for me. And all of these things that you really need to make sure when you're bringing in speech analytics are covered, or any AI tool. This is how they breathe, right? As an ops person or an HR person, we breathe in different components. But when you get into data security and ethics and data privacy, that's their job. So it's very second nature of them to poke holes, ask questions, kick the tires. So make sure they're very involved in the process so that they can hit not just these bullet points shared, but all the other bullet points that they have probably 42 of, with sub bullet points of all of those as well. Next slide, please, Jim. So let's talk about change management. It's one of the things, a lot of folks, and they lie, I love change. Let's be honest, nobody loves change. And if they say they do, they're lying. Are some people good at it? Absolutely. And that's very different from liking it. So it's really important that when you're building your committee of folks that are going to help you implement new technologies within your organization, that you are bringing in both early adopters of change, but the most important person I've always found in change management is the person that pushes back the most. You need that person. And that should be one of the early conversations that you're having, because if you can get them on board, you are least likely to get questioned along the way once you get that squeaky wheel already kind of drinking your Kool-Aid, right? So it's really important that you have a group of individuals and teams and that you share the same value. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. What problems are we trying to solve? Everybody needs to understand those. They need to be intimate with those. And anytime that implementation goes this way, bring them back to what are we trying to solve? There's always things that you can do differently post-implementation. Those can go on a parking lot or a wish list for later. Let's solve what we committed to solving, and then later we can enhance, later we can innovate and develop, and etc. Right? It's important that you have an awareness of what that project is, not just within the committee, not just within the stakeholders and the decision makers and, the guy that signs off on the budget, but it's also important that you start socializing this throughout the culture of the organization, right? And a lot of that will help you set those goals, because you need to make sure that within the culture of the organization that this makes sense and that it's going to fit. Right? So if you have, for example, let's talk speech analytics. If you're putting in this wonderful tool that's going to change the way we coach, L&D department really needs to be involved, right? Because that means maybe changing their templates, maybe changing some of their process flows. There's all these other things that, I call them tentacles that we don't always think about. So make sure that you're bringing this in to everybody. And when you're setting goals, and it's really hard when you're that, let's call it committee head, or you're the person that's championing the project, you've got to sit back a little bit and know that it's not just your goals you're trying to accomplish, especially with AI and especially with speech analytics, because you will start to get a lot of folks that get that shiny object syndrome. Oh, it's cool. I want to do this, or I want to do this. And then somehow you look back, and we'll talk about this later, you look back and say, what happened to my project? We're so off course. Right. So, look at all the different things within change management that's necessary. How are we going to do this? Why are we doing this? What is it going to impact? And then who are the cross-functional leaders that I need involved in my process to make sure that everything runs smoothly? Your best friend in implementing a speech analytics tool is a project manager. They will keep you on point. Nobody likes them because they hold us accountable, right? And the good ones really hold you accountable. But they should be your best friend. They will keep you on track. If you start going down a yellow brick road, they'll keep the teams on track. And most importantly, they'll keep your vendor that you've decided to partner with on track. And it's really important that that project manager has those relationships built to really walk you and the rest of the team through the process. Excuse me. Next slide, please, Jim. All right. So the importance of change management. It is a significant cultural change, right? So when you are looking at implementing new technologies, it is super important that you have those adopters so that this has long-term success. More importantly, and I talked about this earlier, you have to have a champion who is the neck to choke for this project. So during implementation, there's a lot of people that have different stakes and necks to choke within the process, right? Whether it's your dev team and IT, whether it's, your QA leader or your training leader or your ops leader, whomever is owning it. But post-implementation, who's responsible to make sure that this is successful? And it should be one person and a backup in case that one person leaves, right? Because you really need to have that one person that's going to make sure and continue to hold the business accountable to using the product. And not just, yep, we use it, we get these scores. Okay, but then what are you doing with them? Right? There has to be somebody that continues to hold the business accountable to use the AI that was implemented post-implementation. The vendor is always going to be there to support you. The team at eTech is amazing for this. They never leave, ever. And it's wonderful, right? They'll be as involved or as less involved as you want. Your project manager, they're out. They're on to a different implementation. So you really need to make sure as an organization, you've identified that person to continue to see it through. And then calling folks in, whether it be quarterly or monthly or whatever the cadence is required for success, to say, what have we done well lately? What are we missing on? And this really will help stand out as you identify those early adopters and you're cultivating those change leaders. Who are the folks that are respected already? Implementing something new is not the time for somebody to get their stripes as a change leader, right? Who is already respected by the organization, who already gets listened to, who knows how to bring people onto their way of thinking, but still empower them to do their own things. That's who you really want to spearhead a project. That doesn't mean people can't learn along the way or that new folks won't be identified, but during an implementation, especially one that comes with a big investment, you want to make sure that somebody that's running it and that will ultimately be that primary stakeholder has done this before, okay? And then lastly, who's your advocates? This goes right back to bottom up. Who are your agents that's going to love the product? Who are the ones that want to be analyzed, get better, be successful, make a ton of money? Those are the folks that you want help setting the goals. You want them talking to leadership in those town halls and roundtables. You want them sharing their stories, the pitfalls and successes of the technology. Because then you can take that back to your vendor and say, hey, these things work. We want to improve on these things. And that creates a dual accountability and continual innovation and a dual accountability and success of the implementation. Excuse me. Next one, Jim. And then moving on to how to make sure your CX transformation is a success. Guys, like as a former chief people officer and ops leader, my two jobs were make sure the client's happy and make sure the employee is happy. Very rarely in my world did I ever say it was about the customer, because to me, if your employees are happy, your customers will be. Because that's where it starts, right? And yes, customer first always. I will never change that way of thinking, but that doesn't mean customer should always be first of thought. Think of this again, when we talk about all the different employee experience touch points, speech analytics is huge. If you can make them better, if you can make them more confident, if you can make them, decrease the time to skill proficiency, all the things that stress an employee, if you can improve upon it, lessen that stress and make them better at their job, that will resonate every day on the phones. It'll resonate every day through their chat or their email interactions, everything that they do, it will resonate. You will get a happy customer by default, right? Now your clients become happy because their customer is happy. It's a big circle. So really taking a very broad look at customer experience is so important. We always talk about, if I do something so little, it's going to have this big impact. It will, but it won't be a sustainable one, right? And it's great to pick the low-hanging fruit, but at some point you need to identify and fix the tree. And that's really where you take a customer-facing approach, complemented by making sure that your clients have bought into what you're doing. Your customers are going to feel that all day long. It really will become more natural. And this goes to how well are you implementing? And more importantly, and most importantly, always, how well are you executing? Because as you continue to execute these technologies and speech analytics and how we coach and how we train and how we teach, you will get a better cultural naturally within your organization because all of your agents stepped up a notch. Yes, do some agents get weeded out a little bit because maybe you don't need as many? Yes, but now you get better skilled agents. Right. And there's a great way to do some, investment back into the employees with monies that you've saved. There's all these things and it's a great circle. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I can tell you, and I think Jim's going to talk about this here next, is always do the look back. We learn nothing if we don't humbly self-assess ourselves, our processes, our vendors, hold them accountable, give them some feedback too. And make sure that that's not just something we do post-implementation, but as long as you are using the platform or technology. Thanks, Jim.
Great job, Kim. Thank you so much. So just to recap and, I'll bring us home and open it up to questions. So some of the lessons I learned, and I think, Stuart, you said it best, or I learned from Kim today, there are two types of people in the world, people who love change and liars. I love that. I'll be posting that on LinkedIn later today. Also, the good PMs keep us accountable. They hold us accountable. That is awesome. I hope my project managers are out there listening to that because the best of the best do hold us accountable. I also noticed that Manu dresses up cats as dogs to fool engines. I'm not sure why, but I see what he did in his little presentation. He must have a cat at home. But Manu, I've been to your house. You have a dog, so do you dress the dog as the cat? Also, I also learned from Kim, have a backup. I will tell you that is bad. That is a great learning, because you're right. Sometimes people get sick, they have vacation, right? And it's really important to have the backup. And obviously, use the person who has the most influence, which Kim said is the respected. Use your influencers to drive that change. I will take it personally that I have not always done that, and I've learned and adopted as the way. But the lessons we learned today is the AI movement is 10 times faster than anybody anticipated. Everybody says they need it, the new shiny tool, etc. Think bold. I like starting small. I use the baby analogy, crawl, walk, run. If you don't do anything, that's probably your largest risk, in my opinion. With that being said, before I close this out for the day, if we have time, but I wanted to open it up to Q&A for all of us here. Oop, wrong one. Also, if you want to stay up to the latest trends, I publish a monthly newsletter. You're more than welcome to scan that QR code to the right. eTech puts out a ton of content. We have over 250 years combined experience in this space. And all of the C levels and below, and all of our senior people put out newsletters and data. You're more than welcome to subscribe to that. That being said, let me hit up some questions. Let's see what we have. Of course, I'm looking through questions. Let me see.
Let me put it in the chat. We have two from Wilson.
Sure. So Wilson's one that I see is, are your models customizable to specific industries? 100%. Manu can talk to you more on that if you want, but each model is actually designed differently. 100%.
And basically, Stuart, all of these models have been designed keeping this in mind. We are processing millions, hundreds of millions minutes of data almost every quarter. And what that has given us is deep expertise into almost every vertical out there. So not only is your model specifically customized to your own industry vertical, you can actually customize it to your own interactions.
Great one. Hey, Neil's got a great question. Manu, this is for you. From a customer experience and engagement to speech analytics, how can you identify and work with emotions during those interactions? I know you have this is very, very near to your heart. So go ahead and answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you are trying to tag emotion in a conversation, there are two things you have to keep in mind. Are you only focusing on voice? Because a lot of people tell you that you can identify anger, emotions, and so on by just by the speech of the tone. Mostly what we have seen in the last 10 years is that this technology on its own doesn't work. You get so many false positive because of people as passionate as me who talk loud all the time. And that doesn't really mean that I'm angry. So what you have to do...
By the way, Manu, was that a shot at me?
Anyways, so what you have to do is you have to ensure that you are not only measuring sentiments just by the pitch or the tone of the voice, but actually correlate it with what is being spoken. So now that you have the tone and what was being said, now you're able to manage emotions better, be able to tag them accurately, and not only that, but also be able to track what's driving this emotion. So now you know when people are happy or unhappy and why exactly. You should also focus on agent emotion. As Kim said earlier, employee experience drives customer experience. So focus on agent effort. Try to identify things that are very effortful for your agent, like finding the right information or just, broken processes. So to summarize this, focus on agent and customer sentiment both. Try to map it using what is being spoken and tone together.
Awesome. Another one for you, Manu. Shane wants to know, which I know you have real life examples of this. What is the biggest reason companies who use speech analytics come away dissatisfied?
Okay, so the biggest reason that we have seen companies come away dissatisfied is either when they are trying to do too much altogether in the first month of implementing it. They want to solve all the use cases together parallelly, which ends up, kind of distributing the effort and nothing really works out. Or when, as Kim said earlier, when you didn't get the buy-in. Remember, Jim was telling us the buy-in should always be from from down to top. As long as you have the buy-in, you will be able to implement it properly.
Good deal. Stuart's got a great question as well. Another one up your alley, Manu. How can you author their knowledge base and help center articles to prepare for AI integration, both by the training LLMs and augmenting our human content developers' capabilities? I think you're playing with this now.
Yes, Stewart, that's an amazing question. I love that you asked that. Okay, so now, before you even start authoring something, what you have to understand first is what exactly are my weaknesses right now when it comes to knowledge base? What do my agents struggle with? First, you understand that. Now you analyze your knowledge bases to understand what's missing. And then you start making those changes and integrate this information with your speech analytic engine so that not only agents are able to find this information, but when they are not, speech analytics should be able to populate it for the agents and give them this information specifically.
Great one. Here's another one for you, Manu. One of my biggest challenges from Nate, one of my biggest challenges that I continue to run into when looking into implementing an automated QA scorecard is that every solution that they've looked at geared towards what people, agents, or callers say, when so much that we evaluate for is what agents or callers don't say. Is this something you've experienced, and what have you found ways to address this?
Thank you. Nate, that's a good question. When you think about this, a lot of people just focus on keywords-based speech analytic engine. And what end up happening now is that you're only looking to spot specific keywords. So what you have to do is first determine a speech analytic engine that is more contextual and it's not looking for specific keywords only. Once you do that, you have to ensure that you are looking for behaviors and absence of it. Both of them can be actually categorized. We currently do this for almost every customer of ours. It's just about creating a scorecard and conditions to be able to analyze the absence of behavior. Now, how do you understand what is missing? By analyzing your top performers to see what really works. And then you analyze all the rest of the quartile to understand if that behavior is present in the quartile or not. I hope that answers your question, Nate.
So Zidra comes up with one. What are some ways you have seen analytics help clients identify first contact resolution? And yes, this recording will be available, by the way.
Yes.
While you're asking.
Yes. This recording will be available, and some ways to identify first call resolution. You have to start by identifying call intent first. Unless you identify why people are calling you on a very surgical level where you know exactly why somebody called, you will not be able to understand if the resolution was relevant or not. So you start by identifying why people are calling. Is the resolution being provided relevant? And that's how you drive your resolution rates higher.
Good. Next question. Can speech analytics tools help measure the English level of agents who are not native speakers? That'd be you, Manu. I know you're using other tools to identify that. I don't know if speech analytics is the answer, but we do have tools that we use for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So speech analytic might not be the right case to measure this specifically, but you've given me something nice to think about. There are ways you can actually do this, but no, currently speech analytic tools are not a nice use case.
Neil, I'll connect you with Manu so you can pick his brain. Wilson wants to know, can QEval be leveraged on non-voice channels? 100%, Wilson. So we talk about calls because obviously we're all in the call center, but it's omni-channel. It can be a text, a ticket, an email, a chat, phone call. It doesn't really matter. Any piece of interaction you have can be analyzed. Jerry, does a company find the need to hire more resources to review data with the plethora of data trends and findings available? Well, I wish I had Kayleen up here on voice. I would let her answer that, but I think Manu can answer that for Jerry.
Yeah. So, Jerry, in fact, this is the problem that we were talking about in the beginning of this slide. Currently everybody's acquiring tech to be able to just acquire tech. And what ends up happening is you are bombarded with so much data. And now you, as Jim was saying earlier, are you expecting your supervisors and agents to be data analysts? No. So what you have to do is you have to ensure that the engine you are integrating with is providing you bite-sized information for the role that it is catering to. So agents should get the information they have. You don't really need to hire a bunch of people just to be able to make sense out of data. In fact, the engine should be able to reduce the effort that goes into making sense out of data, because now you are able to distribute this information to every role with what's important to them and not having to worry about distributing this information either.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, Manu, this is where we talk about roles changing. I brought speech analytics into the previous global contact center that I ran, and we cut our QA staff down to literally next to nothing. We had 92 QA representatives when we started. When we finished the implementation, we had 6. And those are really, again, to do either the clients that would not authorize speech analytics or to do audit control. Where we really felt that this is where some of your best QAs become the analysts. And again, if you go with the right solution, it's going to give you the answers. What those analysts need to do is be those change leaders, be the ones holding folks accountable and making sure that the supervisors or the coaches, who are not analysts, understand what the technology is telling them. So they become your translators in the sense from when the technology is saying to what has to be done from a touch and feel perspective.
That's a great point. I mean, really what we built when we did it, the same thing. I feel that not every leader has been set up for success in the beginning, because not that this happens in the call center business, but y'all know we promoted leaders who shouldn't have been promoted as leaders out of a need. So we expect to dive them in and them to be analysts. They're not. So how do we, I hate to use the word, but Kayleen knows I use it all the time, spoon feed. How do I spoon feed these new leaders what they need to know, who they need to coach, how they need to coach, when they need to coach? That's pretty much what we're trying to do in this world, is just make it easier. And I use the word effortless. You know, I know Matt Dixon speaks about it all the time, but for me, I talk about effortless. How hard is it for me to do business with you? So for the sake of argument, make it easier for them to take the data, learn from it, and then they become analysts. Manu's got about, I don't know, close to 350 people in his organization right now. Most of them were agents at one time and moved up the career path. Like what Kim said, well, I used to have hundreds of QAs. I don't have those anymore. Now I have analysts, scientists, engineers, and that's been a great career path. All right, we got 8 minutes left. I'll look, any more questions? I don't see any. I will end with this. Why is data quality important? So for those of you who do know, I go to Vegas a lot. I use data at the casinos. See, you can't make data your decisions on bad data. It's risky, right? Inaccurate, poor data, it's just not what you want to do. It leads to these misguided strategies. It's all from the thing. I heard, if you've ever been on a call with a vendor manager and they say, oh my God, that call's horrific, everybody needs to be pulled into training. No, that's not true. Because I'm using Pareto charts to say it happened 0.0001% of the time. 100% that call was terrible. Not everybody needs to be trained on it. That agent does need to be. That's really what you look at it. And you can't judge your call center on bad data. How many times have we coached an agent where they say, you say, I've listened to a call and, whatever. First thing they tell you, I was having a bad day. My dog got run over by a car. But no, in this world, it's, hey, listen, I listened to 842 of your interactions and you're only effective 32% of the time at this. The agent got nowhere to go. What are they going to say? I had a bad day. It was 800 and some calls. So that's kind of how I look at the data for that. And last but not least, remember this, you need domain expertise and AI expertise. When you're looking at someone, and I'm not knocking my partners, I use a lot of them. I'm software agnostic, as most people know in the industry. I use several, but I don't believe there's one solution that fits everybody's needs. So I look for somebody who has the AI expertise, understanding the machines, also the domain expertise. If you're counting on someone who's a tech company and a SaaS company to understand the call center business and never took a call a day in their life, never stepped foot inside a contact center, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because the people that came to me to try to sell us AI back in the day, they did some analysis for me. I sent 1,000 calls. They came back and said, great job, E-Tech, 93% CSAT. I said, you're out. Like, what do you mean I'm out? I'm like, because I gave you 1,000 calls and all those agents are on performance improvement plans. So tell me how you got there. Well, that's a proprietary algorithm. It calculates it based on a bunch of stuff. Well, how'd you get it? Because it's wrong. These are the worst agents in the entire organization. Well, it's proprietary. That's the problem I see in the industry. And I know I offend a lot of my partners out there in the space, but the data should tell a story. It should be customizable, and I should never have any black box algorithms. If you're telling me this is how your engine got it, show me underneath the hood. It's like I tell people this. As an operator, if I'm driving a Porsche, I don't need to know how the car works and why it goes 0 to 60 in seconds or less than so, whatever it is. I do like to look at the outlook of it. But if I'm an engineer and an analyst, I do want to know how the car works. I do want to know how the system works. And that's the only way you can translate that data into intuitive, easy to use visualization, which brings you to those actionable insights. Hopefully everybody had a great day. I think we're doing, if there's one more survey, you can pop it out. If somebody wants a copy of this, my team is going to make sure they get a copy of the recording to everybody that's registered. Is there anything else I missed in Newpalm?
Oh, no, we are good.
All right. Thank you, guys. Everyone have an awesome day. Have a great rest of your week. And we look forward to talking to you in the future.